They say some choices define you forever. Well, I made one that still keeps me up at night. One that I never imagined I'd even consider, let alone act on. And the craziest part? I didn't even see it coming. It started as something small. Harmless, even. But it snowballed into something that shattered everything I thought I knew about myself. You ever find yourself staring into the mirror, not recognizing the person looking back at you? That's where I ended up. After one decision. One night. One moment of weakness, or maybe it was strength, I still don't know. It's hard to talk about this, even now. But I'm telling it because maybe someone out there feels the way I did. Maybe someone's standing right on the edge, looking down into the same dark place I was in. Maybe this story might make you stop, or maybe it'll make you feel like you're not alone. Because that's the part no one talks about, right? The loneliness. The aching kind. The kind that doesn't go away when the house is full, or when people smile at you, or when you go through all the motions like everything's fine. The kind of loneliness that clings to your bones. I had a life that looked pretty good from the outside. A husband. A daughter. A house with cute curtains and a dog that barked too much. Friends who came over on weekends. Laughs around the dinner table. Photos on the wall. But beneath all that, I was disappearing. Bit by bit. Like someone was erasing me with a pencil and I couldn't even scream to stop it. And then they came along. Or maybe they'd always been there, I just hadn't noticed them like that before. 3 men. Close to my husband. Friends of the family. Familiar faces. Familiar voices. But one night, all of that shifted. One look. One laugh that lingered too long. One drink too many. And suddenly, my world tilted. What happened next was something I never thought I was capable of. But I asked them. I asked all 3 of them. And I didn't stutter. I didn't flinch. I didn't even whisper it like a secret. I said it out loud. Like it was nothing. And the moment it left my mouth, it felt like everything stopped. Like the air thickened. Like I couldn't take it back even if I wanted to. That was the beginning of the end. Or maybe, the beginning of something else entirely. So if you're still here, if something in your gut just twisted a little, or your heart's racing the way mine was that night, then stay. Because I need you to hear all of it. Every messy, complicated, painfully real part of what happened next. You might judge me. You might cry for me. You might see yourself in me. But I promise you this. You won't forget this story. Studio Microphone subscribe now to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, where we dive deep into the hidden corners of the human heart, and nothing is ever as simple as it seems. I'm 32. Been married for 11 years. And if I'm being honest, most of those years feel like a blur. Like I was living in a movie that someone else directed, someone else wrote, and I just showed up and read my lines. Ethan, my husband, used to look at me like I was magic. I remember that. I hold on to that, even though it feels like a lifetime ago. He had this spark in his eyes back then. We used to stay up late, talking about everything. Dreaming, planning, laughing until we couldn't breathe. Now, he barely looks at me at all. He comes home from work, nods in my direction, kisses the top of Mila's head, and disappears. Either to his office or the garage, or buried in some email thread on his phone that can't wait. But it always waits, just not for me. Our home is nice, clean, tidy, comfortable. The kind of place that looks good in pictures, but feels hollow when you walk through it. Everything's in its place. Except me. I walk around like a ghost some days. Folding laundry, cooking dinner, helping Mila with her homework. I play the role. I do it well. But inside, I feel like I'm screaming into a void. Mila's 9. She's bright. Observant. Too observant. Sometimes I catch her watching me when I think she's focused on her coloring books or cartoons. Like she knows something's off. Like she can see through the silence between her parents. And then there's the weekends. Ethan's escape, his reset button. Game nights. BBQs, beers. His best friends show up like clockwork. Jared, Liam, and Chris. The boys. The trio that's been with him since college. They all have their quirks. Jared's the charming one, always with a story and a smirk. Liam's quieter, more reserved, but has this quiet confidence about him. And Chris, he's the funny one. Always cracking jokes, always grinning like he knows something no one else does. They come over and it's like Ethan becomes someone else. Not the husband who won't touch me unless it's a pet goodbye. No, around them, he laughs. He talks. He shows up. And I'm just there, playing hostess. Refilling drinks, bringing out snacks, pretending I'm part of the fun. But really, I'm just background noise. Sometimes I felt more like a waitress than a wife. Smiling through dinner while swallowing loneliness like it was dessert. It wasn't always like that. There were nights early on where we all laughed together. I felt included, seen. But over time, even that changed. Ethan started retreating into himself, and I started noticing the way Jared looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. The way Liam would always ask me how I was doing, even when I gave the polite, safe answer. The way Chris made me laugh harder than Ethan had in years. They weren't strangers. They weren't even acquaintances. These were men who knew our family, who knew our routines, who watched our daughter grow up. They knew the sound of my voice when I was tired. They knew when Ethan brushed me off, even if they never said it out loud. And somehow in those moments, I started to feel something. Not for any of them in particular, but for what their attention made me feel. Seen, wanted, noticed. I started wearing lipstick again on Saturdays. Just a little. Started putting on earrings before they came. Not because I wanted to impress anyone. That's what I told myself. But deep down, I knew. I wanted someone to notice. To say I looked nice. To remind me I still existed. And they did. Not all at once. Not in any obvious way. Just little things. A compliment here. A look that lasted a beat too long. A hand that brushed mine when it didn't need to. And Ethan? He didn't notice any of it. Or maybe he did, and just didn't care. I wasn't planning anything. I wasn't thinking ahead. But somewhere in the stillness of my everyday life, the ground started to shift beneath me. And it was only a matter of time before I slipped. It was one of those usual Saturdays. The grill was fired up in the backyard. Music playing low. Beers cracked open. Mila was in her room watching something with her headphones on, the way she always did when the guys were over. I was at the kitchen counter, slicing vegetables. Ethan walked in, phone to his ear, eyebrows drawn together like they always were these days. I didn't think much of it until he looked at me and said, "I've got a run emergency at the office. Shouldn't take long." He didn't even stay to eat the food I'd been prepping all afternoon. Just grabbed his keys, kissed the air somewhere near my cheek and left. Door closed. Engine started. Gone. I stood there for a second, knife in hand, just listening to the silence that followed after the car pulled out of the driveway. Then I heard laughter from the backyard. Jared. Loud, carefree, like nothing in the world ever really bothered him. Liam's deeper chuckle followed. Chris shouting something stupid. And I smoothed down my dress, took a breath, and went outside. I wish I could say I was surprised by what happened next. But if I'm being honest, some part of me had been waiting for it. At first, everything felt normal. I brought out the tray. Jared took it from me before I could set it down, made some joke about me being too good to be married to Ethan. I laughed. Polite. Just enough to let it pass. But then he leaned in a little. Just enough for me to feel the warmth of his breath near my neck. "You know," he said, "if Ethan doesn't appreciate you, someone else will." It wasn't the words. It was the way he said them. Slow. Confident. Eyes locked on mine like he was daring me to respond. I laughed it off, again. Tried to pretend it was harmless. A joke. But something shifted in the air after that. The kind of shift you feel before you understand. Liam went quiet. He avoided my eyes the rest of the evening. Wouldn't even look directly at me when I offered him another drink. That silence said more than words ever could. And Chris, he started watching me. Really watching. Not in a creepy way. Just observant. Like he was studying me. Like he suddenly noticed details he'd never cared to look at before. Later that evening, I was wiping the table down. Chris stood beside me, helping pick up some dishes. My fingers brushed his, and it was nothing. Just a touch. Just skin on skin. But he didn't pull away. Not right away. Just held the moment a second too long. It wasn't just what Jared said. It was how Liam looked away. It was how Chris lingered. And it was how I felt. Right there in the middle of all of it. Wanted. Desired. Like someone had turned the lights back on in a room that had been dim for years. I went to bed that night, lying next to Ethan, who was already asleep. His back to me. Breathing deep. Completely unaware. And I kept seeing Jared's eyes. Hearing his voice. Remembering the tone. The way he said someone else would appreciate me. The thing is, I didn't feel guilty. Not then. I felt awakened. Like something inside me had stretched and yawned after being dormant for far too long. I kept asking myself, was it wrong to want to be wanted? Was it wrong to enjoy it? I didn't cross a line that night. Not physically. But in my head, oh, I went all the way. And once that thought took root, it didn't let go. It started to grow. Quietly. Slowly. But deeply. After that night, everything shifted, but only for me. Ethan didn't notice anything. Nothing changed on his end. He still left his dirty socks on the floor, still forgot to ask how my day was, still tapped at his phone like it held more value than the sound of my voice. He'd come home, say hi to Mila, maybe mention what to thaw for dinner tomorrow, and disappear into whatever world he escaped to when he closed the office door behind him. I used to knock on that door, back when I still believed we could fix things. Now? I barely glanced at it. What was the point? But my mind was loud. Louder than it had been in years. I kept thinking about Jared. About that look. The boldness in his voice. The suggestion behind his words. About Liam's silence and the guilt in his eyes that told me he felt something, too. And Chris, that pause when our fingers touched. That softness. That curiosity. They were all so different. Jared, the bold one, cocky, with that mischievous charm. Liam, the quiet protector, deep eyes that seemed to see more than he said. And Chris, playful, unpredictable, like he'd take your hand and run with you into the dark without asking where you were going. I started noticing things I'd never allowed myself to notice before. Jared's forearms when he rolled up his sleeves. Liam's voice when he spoke softly, almost like a whisper. Chris's laugh, wild and free, cutting through the silence in ways Ethan's never did. And I hated myself for it. But only for a little while. Because then the craving came back. Stronger. Is it so wrong to want to be seen? To want someone's eyes to linger a little too long? To feel beautiful when you haven't in years? I'd look in the mirror and catch a glimpse of myself, lips fuller than I remembered, eyes darker, body softer, curves that no one touched anymore. I'd stare too long. Sometimes I didn't even recognize the woman looking back. Other times, I saw her for the first time in forever. And I wondered, if they see her, why doesn't he? What did I do to become invisible? The guilt crept in. I'd shake my head, splash cold water on my face, remind myself I was a wife. A mother. A woman who made vows. But those thoughts didn't stay long. Because almost immediately after, came the fantasies. Stupid, wild, unthinkable fantasies. Of Jared walking in and backing me against the counter while Ethan's away. Of Liam quietly following me into the kitchen and kissing me before I could say a word. Of Chris pulling me onto his lap mid-laughter and whispering, "I've been waiting for you to notice." And I hated that it made me feel alive. I hated that it made me feel anything at all. Because Ethan didn't cheat on me. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lie or disappear or hit or betray. He was just gone. Emotionally gone. Distant. Numb. Like I was a fixture in the house. Like I was furniture. And yet, here I was, betraying him in my mind every single day. It was like I was starving, and suddenly, the table was full. Every glance. Every memory. Every night I lay awake beside a man who never reached for me. It all started stacking up inside me like a fire I couldn't put out. I wasn't proud of it. But I wasn't sorry either. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt something. Even if it was dangerous. Even if it was wrong. even if it was the beginning of my undoing. I started small. I told myself it was harmless. At the next weekend get-together, I chose a different dress. Not anything too revealing, just a little lower at the neckline, a little tighter at the waist. Something I hadn't worn in years. I put on lipstick again. Not red. Not too obvious. Just enough to feel like I wasn't invisible. And when I walked into the backyard with a tray of drinks, I felt it. Jared looked first, eyes scanning, then pausing. His smile curved in that way that told me he noticed. Chris gave a low whistle and raised his eyebrows, playful like always. And Liam, he looked at me, really looked, then quickly turned away. That reaction hit deeper than I expected. I didn't flirt. Not really. Not at first. I just lingered when I spoke. Made eye contact longer than usual. Laughed a little louder at their jokes. Let my hand brush Jared's shoulder when I passed behind him. All innocent things. Things that could be explained away. But we all knew what was happening. The following week, I added a little more. Sat closer. Let my knees graze Liam's under the table. Pretended I didn't notice when Chris's gaze dropped and stayed. Jared started making little comments. Still light, still jokes, but with a different energy now. And I fed it. Not because I wanted to be cruel. Not because I wanted attention for the sake of attention. I fed it because it felt good to be wanted. Because the silence in my marriage had grown so loud, I needed something, anything, to drown it out. One night, Ethan was running late. Again. He'd texted, stuck at the office. Go ahead without me. So it was just me and them. We'd had a couple drinks by then. The laughter had gotten loose, lazy. I was on my second glass of wine, and my guard had lowered in all the wrong ways. I don't even remember what joke led into it, but suddenly I heard myself say it. You know, we should just do something crazy one day. All of us. Just once. The words hung there, floating in the air between us. I laughed right after. Played it off. Like it was just another wild comment meant to stir the pot. But none of them laughed back. Not right away. Jared tilted his head, that crooked smile flickering into something more serious. Chris blinked. Looked at Liam. Liam, he didn't even look up. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was electric. Like the moment before a storm when the air changes, when you know something's about to happen. Then Jared chuckled. Loud. Too loud. You're dangerous, he said, pointing at me with his beer bottle. Ethan has no idea. They all laughed then. It broke the tension. We moved on. Jokes were made. Someone changed the music. I cleaned up the glasses. Just like always. But I felt it. They did too. Something had shifted again. I went to bed that night feeling hot under my skin. Buzzing. My heart beat like I'd done something wrong, but the truth was, I couldn't stop smiling. Ethan was already asleep when I crawled into bed. Face to the wall. Breathing even. Unbothered. I lay there staring at the ceiling, still tasting the wine on my tongue, still hearing the words I'd said in my own voice. It hadn't felt like a joke. Not to me. And just as I was about to drift off, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I reached for it. One message. From Jared. Just 5 words. Did you mean it? I stared at Jared's message for a long time. Did you mean it? My thumb hovered over the screen. I could have ignored it. I should have. But instead, I typed back one word. Maybe. That was all it took. After that, things moved fast. Faster than I expected. Faster than I was ready for. But I didn't stop it. I let it happen. Ethan had a business trip scheduled the following weekend. 3 days away. Same routine. Same indifference. He packed his suitcase, kissed me on the cheek, reminded me to water the plants. He didn't ask what I'd be doing while he was gone. He didn't even say he'd miss me. That was the last push I didn't know I was waiting for. So I made the call. I didn't invite them all at once. That wasn't the plan, if there was a plan. But somehow it happened that way. One text turned into 3. One yes turned into 3. I should have canceled when I realized they were all coming. But I didn't. The night arrived. Mila had a sleepover at her friend's house. The house was quiet still. I lit candles, why, I don't know. Maybe to pretend it was romantic. Or maybe to hide the truth in shadows. They arrived one by one. Jared first, then Chris, then Liam last. It was awkward. Stiff smiles. Careful glances. Everyone standing too far apart, like we were waiting for someone else to start something. I poured drinks. We didn't sit. No one really knew where to go or how to begin. I took the first step. I always imagined if something like this ever happened, I'd feel in control. Bold. Powerful. But standing there in that silence, I just felt numb. Still, I led the way. I walked to the living room and sat down. Crossed my legs. Waited. Jared followed. Then Chris. Liam stood for a while. I looked up at him and whispered, "It's okay." That's when the line blurred. And then disappeared. Clothes came off slowly at first. Then quicker. Hesitation turned into hunger. Touches, hands, mouths, bodies. It was impulsive. It was messy. A storm of emotions hit me all at once. Pleasure and shame tangled together so tightly I couldn't tell one from the other. For a moment, I felt wanted. Desirable. Real. And then just as quickly, it was over. We lay there, tangled limbs, catching our breath in a room that suddenly felt too quiet, too small. No one said a word. Not even Jared, who always had something clever to say. Chris sat up first, reached for his shirt without looking at me. Liam kept his eyes on the ceiling. I pulled the blanket over myself even though I wasn't cold. And that's when it hit me. As I lay there in the aftermath, I didn't feel empowered. I didn't feel victorious. I felt like I'd set fire to everything I'd ever known. The silence was deafening. No one moved. No one reached for me. And then, through the hallway, the door creaked open. And I heard her voice. "Mila. Mom?" Her voice cut through me. "Mom?" Soft. Sleepy. Confused. I shot up, yanking the blanket over myself like it could undo what had just happened. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I couldn't breathe. The guys froze, like statues, nobody saying a word. I called out, "1 second, sweetie. Go back to bed, okay?" My voice shook. It didn't sound like mine. She didn't respond. Just the faint shuffle of little feet down the hallway, then silence. I sat there frozen for a moment longer. No one looked at me. No one said goodbye. They all left, one by one, quiet as ghosts. Jared didn't even meet my eyes. Chris was the last to go. He paused by the door, like he might say something. But he didn't. Just nodded and walked out into the night. And then it was just me. Alone in a room that smelled like regret. I cleaned up. Scrubbed the wine glasses, the couch cushions, even the floors, like I could scrub away what happened. But I couldn't scrub my mind. I couldn't scrub the image of Mila standing in the hallway. I didn't know what she saw, or how much she understood. But she saw something. I felt it. The next morning, she barely spoke to me. She avoided my eyes. I asked her how the sleepover was, she shrugged. I offered her pancakes, she said she wasn't hungry. And that silence, it was worse than any screaming. A few days passed. Jared never reached out again. Completely vanished. No text. No apology. Nothing. Liam sent one message. "That shouldn't have happened. Please don't contact me again." Chris messaged the day after that. Just 2 words. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? Ethan came home the next night. Walked in like everything was normal. But something about him was different. He looked softer. More present. He asked me how I'd been. Said he missed me. Kissed me like he used to years ago. For a second, I froze. Then I kissed him back because I didn't know what else to do. Later that night, he laid down beside me, pulled the blanket up to his chest, then paused. Sniffed the pillow. "Did you change the detergent?" he asked. I lied. "Yeah. New scent." He nodded and went to sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours, trying not to cry. But the cologne hadn't come from detergent. It came from skin. From hands. From the night I wished I could rewind and couldn't. The days that followed felt like walking through quicksand. Every smile was forced. Every word felt fake. Mila stayed quiet, distant. She stopped sitting at the table with me. She didn't want bedtime stories anymore. She didn't hug me like before. And that distance, it broke me in ways I didn't expect. I started crying in the shower. At first, quietly. Then full-on sobs. The kind where your chest heaves and the walls close in. I didn't recognize myself. Couldn't stand to look in mirrors anymore. I'd catch a glimpse and turn away because I hated what I saw. Not just my face, but what I'd become. I had asked for it. I had wanted it. And now? Now I couldn't even look my daughter in the eyes. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. I kept replaying every second of that night in my head. Every breath, every word, every choice. I thought it would make me feel powerful. I thought it would fix something broken inside me. Instead, it shattered everything that was left. I started asking myself questions I didn't want the answers to. Was it worth it? That night, that choice, that moment I crossed a line I can never uncross, did it give me anything that lasted longer than the guilt it left behind? Or did I just burn my life down to feel a flicker of warmth? I used to think I was the one who got forgotten in the marriage. The one who faded into the background. The one who suffered in silence while everyone else carried on. But now I wasn't so sure. Had I become the villain in my own life story? I wanted to blame Ethan. His absence. His coldness. His distractions. And maybe he was part of it. Maybe his neglect planted the seed. But I was the one who watered it. I was the one who watched it grow. I was the one who let it bloom into something dark. I started journaling, trying to make sense of what I was feeling, writing things I didn't have the courage to say out loud. The pages filled up fast, and none of it made me feel better. I even booked a session with a therapist. I thought if I said it out loud to a stranger, maybe the shame would lift. Maybe the truth would feel lighter once it was spoken. But it didn't. It just hung there in the room like smoke, curling around my throat. Ethan kept trying. That's what made it worse. He brought home flowers one night, yellow tulips. My favorite. Said he saw them and thought of me. He kissed my cheek. Made dinner. Asked me how I was feeling. I smiled. Said I was fine. And inside, I cracked open again. Because how do you stand beside someone who's finally showing up, after you've already destroyed what you were waiting for them to fix? I watched him clean the dishes and thought, you don't even know how far I've fallen. He was finally trying, and I was the one who'd already given up. Then there was Mila.